changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration to make you simply happy. It's Wow Wednesday, and today I'm going to share a couple of very cool stories from our new Mother's Day book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Best Mom Ever. You know, last week I shared a story from Jody Messina about the invisible string that connects her with her mother. Today, I want to talk about another invisible connection, one that enabled Valerie Testa Almquist to be there when her mother needed her most, and maybe even save her life. Valerie tells us that she woke up one dreary, rainy Monday morning with no idea that her life was about to change forever. It was an easy day, actually, as her husband had taken a vacation day, and it was August, so their kids were on vacation too. Their younger son asked if they could go shopping for a new video game that had just been released. So off they went, and after they bought the game, Valerie suggested they drive to a ShopRite and eat lunch in the cafe area there. This actually made no sense, as the ShopRite was half an hour away and it was pouring rain. Who would drive to a grocery store half an hour away to eat lunch? Luckily, Valerie's husband and son were fine with it, so off they went to that faraway ShopRite. And as they were walking around that ShopRite deciding what to eat, they ran into Valerie's parents. That was a complete surprise, but a happy one. The five of them picked out their lunches, and then they sat in the cafe area to eat. Valerie's mother shared a story about something she had watched on television and then rested her head on Valerie's shoulder. This was a little odd, so Valerie put her arm around her mother and asked, "Ma, are you tired?" When she didn't respond, Valerie asked again. And then she realized her mother had passed out, and she started screaming for her husband to call 911. The ambulance came, and Valerie rode in the passenger seat while her husband followed behind with their son and Valerie's father. Now Valerie was so glad that she hadn't resisted that compulsion to eat lunch at that out-of-the-way grocery store. By the time the ambulance reached the hospital, Valerie's mother's vital signs were poor, but she was still alive. Valerie had her mother's list of medications with her, so she gave them to the emergency room nurse and then filled out all the paperwork while the staff took care of her mother. I gotta put a sidebar in here. Kudos to Valerie for having her mother's list of medications with her. That is like the number one thing that I never had every time either of my parents was rushed to the hospital. Now I finally have a photo of my father's medications in my phone, just in case, but it took me a long time to learn that lesson. So Valerie's mother went through a battery of tests and spent the night. She told Valerie that having her by her side the whole time, from the ambulance through the hospital stay, made all the difference to her. She ended up getting a pacemaker, and now, 6 years later, she is still doing well. Valerie doesn't know what would have happened that day if she hadn't made that bizarre trip to that ShopRite for no apparent reason. Would her mother have died there? Would her father have recognized the problem quickly enough? Would her mother have been seated when she passed out? Or would she have been standing in an aisle or walking through the parking lot to her car? Certainly, the fact that Valerie was there changed the course of events that day, with her mother merely passing out on her shoulder and her daughter immediately knowing what to do. So that mother-daughter connection can go in the other direction, too. And another writer in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Best Mom Ever, tells us about the day that her mom showed up at just the right time for her, again, with no reason for it to happen. Jen Shea tells us that she had just been told by her doctor that she would not be able to get pregnant. She was devastated, and she decided she needed a puppy right then and there. She and her husband were going to start looking for the puppy at shelters the next weekend. But then Jen couldn't wait, and she found herself immediately driving to the Connecticut Humane Society facility in a nearby town. When she got to the shelter, it was heartbreaking. So many dogs looked at her with beseeching eyes. And then she saw the dog she had to have. He saw her and started wagging his tail and reaching his paw through the bars of the cage to her. It was love at first sight. But right behind Jen were a mother and daughter, and that girl was talking about wanting a puppy of the same breed. Jen didn't move. She stood there guarding her puppy until one of the attendants came over, and then Jen said she would take this puppy home right then. She secured the dog and went into a room to do the paperwork. But when it came time to pay the fee, there was a problem. They wouldn't take a check. Jen needed to run to the bank to get cash, but they wouldn't hold the dog for her. That other family could swoop in and take her puppy. Now Jen was stuck. She couldn't leave to get cash because of the other family, but she couldn't get cash without leaving. She called her mother, who only lived a few miles away, but there was no answer. She called a friend, but she didn't answer either. Then, all of a sudden, Jen heard a familiar voice behind her. It was her mother. Her mom explained that she was out at the grocery store, and then for some reason she had decided to drive completely out of her way, right past the Humane Society, where she saw a car that she thought might have been her daughter's. She had parked and come inside just to check. Jen's mother had enough cash on her, so she paid for the dog, and Jen got her puppy. And then, because our Chicken Soup for the Soul miracle stories just keep on giving, sure enough, a year later, Jen, whose doctor had said she would never have a baby, gave birth to a little girl. I'm Amy Newmark. Thanks for listening today. If you want to read more stories from Chicken Soup for the Soul, Best Mom Ever, you'll find it at Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Costco Canada, Indigo, Amazon, and wherever else books are sold in the U.S. and Canada. Come back tomorrow for Thoughtful Thursday for another story about moms. But this one will be about a mom who had a lifelong impact on her son when he watched her, a white woman, insist on sitting in the back of a bus in the South decades ago.